Warwick Church rises over the roofs of the old town, higher even than the castle. There is no finer testament to the status of the parish churches of medieval England than their use as mausoleums by the nation's most illustrious families. The family in this case was Beauchamp. The church was a pre-conquest foundation and became part of the College of the Newborough Earls of Warwick. It was the advent of Beauchamps to that earldom in the 14th century that marked St Mary's rise to glory. Thomas Beauchamp, who died in 1369, was an original Knight of the Garter. His son, also Thomas, died in 1401, and another son, Richard, in 1439. Their tombs in the Beauchamp Chapel embrace the flowering of English late Gothic. The tomb of Richard is one of the masterpieces of medieval art. First, the West Tower. It was rebuilt in the early 18th century, along with the nave after the Great Fire of Warwick in 1694. It projects from the west front, rising sheer from the pavement above an open arch. The composition forms a magnificent climax to views from all over the town. Though sometimes attributed to Wren, it was the work of an architect named William Wilson, working with the Smith of Warwick brothers. The design does not find universal favour. It is criticised for the identical scale of each of its stages, depriving it of vertical tension. Warwick's tower sits rather than soars. The first impression of the interior is of a German hall church, with aisles the same height as the nave. All three spaces are vaulted. The piers are Gothic, like huge palm trees, but the capitals are almost Corinthian, with acanthus leaves. At the west end is an intrusive tower arch, inserted but not needed when the tower was relocated further west over the street to avoid further settlement. In the south aisle are bread shelves for 32 poor men and women. Beyond the nave lies the Middle Ages. It starts to the north of the chancel in the Norman crypt, a large vaulted space containing one of only 2 ducking stools said to survive in England. The other is at Leominster in Herefordshire. Above is the chapter house with the tomb of Fulk Greville, who died in 1628. The Grevilles, Barons Brooke, emerged from the wool plutocracy of Chipping Campden in the Middle Ages to be granted Warwick Castle by James I, and eventually the revived earldom of Warwick, which they retain, though without the castle, to this day. The panelled chancel is early perpendicular at its most graceful. The vault has unusual flying ribs, found in Bristol and other cathedrals, but probably unique in a parish church. In the middle of the chancel is the tomb of the first Earl, Thomas, holding the hand of his wife, Catherine. Thomas fought at Crécy when just 17, and then at Poitiers, and was guardian of the Black Prince. Round the chest are 36 mourning relatives in a superb parade of 14th century alabaster carving. To the north of the chancel is the vestry, with the sacristy above, its windows looking down on the chancel beneath. Warwick in its heyday was a treasury of relics, boasting fragments of the manger, the true cross, the burning bush, and Thomas à Becket's hair shirt. To the south, we enter the curious Dean's Chapel, a casket of late Perpendicular panelling and plaster fan vaults with pendants. It was inserted among the buttresses of the Beauchamp Chapel, which was originally a freestanding building. This latter chamber is normally approached from the south transept and is the only medieval chantry that stands comparison with Henry VII's chapel at Westminster. It is complete, spectacular, and to some acerbic critics, such as Pevsner, even rather vulgar. To the modern eye, it is also spoiled by the Gothic reredos of 1775, whose whitewashing remains a garish intrusion. The centrepiece is the Beauchamp tomb, with its gilded bronze effigy and strange semicircular cage protecting it. Richard Beauchamp was a towering figure of the late Middle Ages. He was a confidant of Henry V, was present at his death at Vincennes, and was appointed guardian of the infant Henry VI, whose disastrous reign spawned the Wars of the Roses. Richard was duly authorised by the King in Council to chastise us from time to time according to his good advice. He later became governor of the King's domain in France, dying in Rouen in 1439. Within 10 years, Richard's line had died out, and his wealth passed by marriage to the Nevilles, the combined Beauchamp-Neville wealth making them the most powerful magnates in England. Warwicks were no longer king-servers, but often mischievous king-makers. Old Beauchamp is thus a romantic figure, last of a generation of medieval noblemen who won renown for loyalty to their king and country abroad, rather than in civil war at home. His will stated that he be interred within the Collegiate Church of Our Lady in Warwick, a chapel of Our Lady well fair and goodly built, within the middle of which chapel I will that my tomb be made. The chapel was begun in 1442, but not completed until 1464, at the then phenomenal cost of £2,481. Contracts for the tomb are extant, including for Purbeck marble from Corfe. The effigy, an image of a man armed, but not thought to be a likeness, was executed by a London craftsman, John Essex of St. Paul's, from a model by John Massingham. According to the historian John Harvey, Massingham was a by no means unworthy contemporary of Donatello. Essex was later to work on Henry VI's tomb. Beauchamp lies with his feet facing the altar, his hands parted half in prayer, half in wonder, to enable him on resurrection to see the Virgin on the vault boss. He is attended by his family emblems, the griffin and the bear. The face, hands, and armour are superbly fashioned, yet the setting and pose remain stiff and medieval. The weepers, cast in brass, stand, Burgundian style, in carved Gothic niches around the chest. Each is identified by the adjacent heraldry, including the robed figure of Warwick the Kingmaker, a gallery of 15th century sculpture. Facing Beauchamp's tomb rises the great east window, also designed by Massingham. To relieve and adorn the expanse of perpendicular tracery, he carved figures in the window frame. The glass by the court glazier John Prud survives and is outstanding. Prud jewelled his glass, inserting precious stones into halos and garments, for instance in the halo of the Virgin Annunciate. Saints, angels, biblical characters are piled high to the roof, flanked by their panels in coloured stone. Above flows the rich curvilinear vault. Nor is this the end. Another century yields 3 Renaissance tombs of the Dudleys, Earls of Warwick, in a new creation by Henry VIII. Ambrose Dudley, who died in 1590, lies on a simple alabaster chest next to Richard. Another Dudley, Robert, Earl of Leicester, who died in 1588, favourite of Elizabeth I, lies with his wife, Lettice, against the north wall. This Tudor tomb would rate pride of place were it not in such company. Heraldry climbs the wall with increasing pomp. The chapel's original choir stalls are meek in comparison. As we retreat from the chapel through the screen into the nave, England seems to fall silent, like the doors closing on Henry V.